It's not a typical practice of the city to water during the middle of the day. We try to comply with our city ordinance. We shouldn't be watering between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. That's for the city. That's for all residents, all HOAs within the city. Typically should not be watering in that time frame. If for some reason the system is on during the day, we need to know about that, and we want to correct that because we should not be watering during the day.
Welcome to Herrimanology,
the official podcast to keep up with Herriman City.
We'll take you inside the city, explore the latest news and updates, show you how your government operates, and discuss the issues that affect us all. Now, here are your hosts talking all things Herriman on Herrimanology.
All right, welcome to Herrimanology. It is Monday, April 22nd, and pleasant day outside. By the way, I have to note, we did this last week. We had some technical issues where the audio made us sound like robots. So unusable, so we're redoing. So I want to thank Anthony Teuscher, our Deputy Director of Parks, Recreation, and Events, for coming in and doing the same podcast again for your consumption. So thanks, Anthony, for coming in.
No problem. Always good to get a second chance at it.
I'm John LaFollette, Communications Manager, and today we're talking all about parks and parks irrigation. Something that's at the top of everybody's mind every single spring and summer and fall is water, irrigation. Conservation's been a big topic in recent years with the city. So we'll get to that. But first we want to talk about what Anthony does here at the city, what the Parks Department does in particular. Anthony's over events as well, but we'll talk about parks today. So maybe for those who don't know, what does the Parks Department do? Do you build parks? Do you maintain? But what does the department do? Your responsibilities maybe throughout the year.
Yeah. So we do have a broad range of things that we do here in the Parks Department. Most of it is centered around maintenance and upkeep of our parks. We have a hand in the construction process of new projects and new parks, and we'll give our input on what we think is going to be best on those projects, and we work with designers and our engineers as they develop those new spaces. But the majority of what we do internally is upkeep and maintenance in our parks. And I mean, we have a broad range of parks and facilities that we oversee. So, I mean, in the wintertime, we build ice at the ice ribbon and operate the ice ribbon. In the summertime, that turns into a splash pad. We have the main splash pad and two others that we operate. We oversee all the parks and the playgrounds associated with those parks, all the green space and open space, and as well the trails, the urban and the primitive trails that we have throughout the city. So there's a broad range of things that we do. With that, I mean, with all of that, it comes a lot of weeding, mowing, trimming of the tall grass, native grasses. There's a lot of emptying garbage cans and dog waste stations and cleaning bathrooms and other facilities that we operate. So there's a wide variety.
And that is kind of a mix between employees and contracted work, kind of depending on availability and budget and all that.
Correct. Typically, we have two main contractors that we work with throughout the year. One that does our mowing and one does our fertilization and weed control within the manicured areas. Outside of that, everything is done in-house by our Parks Department employees for the city.
Parks and open space is something that Herriman City especially puts a lot of emphasis on. I feel like a city that has a lot of parks, a lot of trails, and that's something that will continue to expand in coming years too.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got, I think we're at 49 parks right now.
Goodness.
So 49 individual parks with 18 restroom facilities, I believe is what we're at right now. We have about 30 miles of primitive trails, with about 30 miles of urban trails that we oversee. Our square footage of just green space and grass that we maintain it's about 7.8 million square feet of grass that we mow or our contractor mows and that our contractor fertilizes and sprays for weeds and takes care of. But we do all the irrigation on that as well, and that's one thing that keeps us immensely busy throughout the summer is keeping up with that irrigation.
Yeah, so what does that look like? I'm thinking in my yard, I'll go around every so often and look at all the sprinkler heads, make sure they're all functioning properly.
Yeah.
If there are any leaks, fix those. Fertilize my lawn. This is a tiny scale at my own house. Is that kind of what the department does during the warmer months too on the city facilities?
Yeah, so we have, I think it's 6 different areas that we've kind of 6 zones within the city that we've broken down, and we have 6 employees that oversee their respective zones. Now, within those zones, I mean, there's tens of thousands of heads that they have to maintain and oversee. there's probably thousands of valves that they have to maintain and make sure are functioning properly. So it's a lot for one individual person to maintain and oversee, even if they're doing it 10 hours a day for 4 or 5 days a week. It's a lot for them. It's a lot bigger scale than what a homeowner's doing at their individual residence. So, and it takes once we start the irrigation in the spring, usually April timeframe, we'll start turning on water. Once we turn it on to the minute we blow it out in, say, late October usually, they're constantly monitoring, auditing, checking those heads, making sure they're spraying where they're supposed to, that we don't have any geysers or leaks. They're fixing breaks and leaks that occur. It's nonstop with the irrigation during the summer months.
Especially with public parks being heavily used, and some of them more than others too. Sometimes those heads take a beating.
Right. The public spaces, as you can imagine, again, it's different than somebody's front lawn where maybe you have your kids playing in your lawn and maybe the odd neighbor kid comes over and maybe messes with your sprinkler. It seems like between the mowers and just the heavy use in the public space, kids riding their bikes or motorcycles through there, which shouldn't happen, but we see a lot of that. We do see a lot of damage on the different heads out there. So, some of it's senseless too. You'll have a head that'll stick up, and kids are curious. They're wondering what's going on. They'll go over and mess with it. Sometimes they'll kick it off, and then next thing you know, we've got a geyser and we've got a head we've got to repair. So that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to avoid, are those geysers and the leaks and breaks and stuff that are wasting water.
So a few years ago, I believe it was 2020. I might be off by a year or so, but Utah was in the midst of an extreme drought across the entire state. Water conservation was at the top of mind for everybody, including the city of Herriman. And we use a lot of water in the city because we have so many different parks facilities. In 2020, the Parks Department, the Water Department worked together on some new practices. Maybe describe some of those and how you prioritize different types of facilities.
Yeah, so I think it was actually 2021 when Governor Cox issued an executive order asking everybody in the state, actually, private and public entities, to help conserve water, right? And as a result of that, we issued some best management practices as a Parks Department in the city to help mitigate help reduce our effect on water demand. And some of the things we were already doing, it had to do with the way we maintained and cared for our green spaces, how we watered them. Some things we did change to help reduce our demand on our water system. One of the big things that I think really helped reduce our water consumption was reducing the amount that we watered in our we'll call them passive recreation areas, right? Where you have active recreation areas, which are sports fields, fields that are heavily used for a specific purpose, for soccer games, football games, lacrosse, whatever it may be. But then we also have a lot of passive area, park strips and just random odd spots that they have turf, but they're not really being used for any real recreational purpose. So in those areas, we committed to water no more than 3 days a week, whereas in our active recreation areas, we allowed ourselves up to 5 days a week watering schedule. And those active recreation areas, they need the additional water because there's such heavy use there with sports teams. And those passive areas, they're just not being used. It's okay if they're a little dry and they're a little brown during the summer months, during the really hot months where nobody's using them. So we just decided we were going to be okay with that.
And was that a reduction from previous years?
Yeah.
In different watering practices then?
Yeah, absolutely. With the best management practices came a whole, we'll call it a culture shift within our department. Whereas in the past, we weren't so focused on water conservation, and when we saw an issue, our employees tended to just throw more water on the issue to make it go away, rather than getting to the root of the problem, trying to figure out what was causing the drying or brown spots, whether that might be bugs or a fungus or something like that. They would just throw more water at it, trying to make that issue go away. But we've had to adjust the way we attack these types of problems, and in so doing, I think we've we drastically reduced the amount of water that we've been able to use. I do have some numbers that over the last, so since 2018, we were 2018 and 2019, we were able to stay about the same on our water usage, in spite of increasing the actual area that we're watering. So we've added park acreage over those years, and we have since every year we add park acreage. But those first 2 years, we were able to stay about level, about the same. In 2022, we reduced our consumption by 18%. Last year, 23, we reduced it by 6%. Again, in spite of adding acreage that we actually maintain. And then we're on track this year as well to reduce our usage even more. So we're trending in the right direction. We're trying to do our part to reduce our effect on water consumption and the need for water here in our city.
I've noticed that too with residents when I've created graphics for water conservation for the water department. In addition to the city reducing watering, I want to give residents credit too for doing much the same thing. Even though Herriman is growing both population-wise and in public facility-wise, watering has actually gone down the last few years. So
yeah, again, I think it's a culture shift within our city, within our state. I think people are realizing, hey, we're really in a water crunch, and we may have years like this year and last year that we had exceptional rainfall and snowfall throughout the winter and spring, but we've all got to chip in and do our part in order to have a long-term effect on our water supply.
Something that we see in our inbox a lot of days throughout the summer is, why are you, or whoever you happens to be, whether it's the city or an HOA or somebody, why are you watering during the middle of the day?
Yeah.
Is that something the city does or intends to do? Might that be HOAs? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, so it's not a typical practice of the city to water during the middle of the day. We try to comply with the ordinance, our city ordinance that, as written, says that we shouldn't be watering between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. So, and that's for the city, that's for all residents, all HOAs within the city, typically should not be watering in that time frame. And that's because of, typically it's windier that time during the daytime than it is in the mornings and evenings, so you're going to get a lot more drift. And number two is evaporation is higher during that time frame as well. So there are exceptions to that ordinance, and that's if we're trying to establish new sod that's been laid down or new seed that's been put down. And in certain cases like that, if we can, we'll put some signage out, some A-frame signs, let people know that we've got some new seed we're trying to establish or new sod we're trying to establish. People don't always see that, and they'll still call in and ask why we're watering. But I think that's good that they're calling in and noticing that, because if for some reason the system is on during the day, we need to know about that, and we want to correct that, because we should not be watering during the day. They may also see during startup, shutdown, maintenance, even through the winter months or the summer months, that the system is on because we're doing an audit or a check on the system. We're trying to check the heads, make sure we don't have any geysers or heads that are shooting out into the road or on the sidewalk. So I've asked our employees that if they are doing that they make themselves highly visible. They park their trucks with the lights on in the area. They have a bright vest on, just so people can see that they're out there actively maintaining. And again, if a resident happens to call in and report that, we're glad to just let them know we're just out doing maintenance in the area. We appreciate your call, because if it had been an actual issue, we'd like to get out and get it taken care of and get it fixed.
Yeah. So some people may not realize the difference between city public facilities and other private facilities, private parks that look like they're public, they may be accessible to the public, but are privately owned. What's the difference between those two types of facilities?
Yeah, so we do have HOAs within the city that the city does not maintain and the city doesn't take care of. And sometimes the boundaries are confusing to even us and our employees. Sometimes we have to check maps to remember where our boundary starts and stops. There are maps published online for residents to check, and if they're not sure whether it's an HOA park or a city-owned park, they're more than welcome to call in and ask us, and we'll figure it out and let them know. If there is an issue on the HOA side, we're happy to contact the HOAs and let them know, hey, we received this concern from a resident, or we've noticed there's an issue with your irrigation system running during the day, or whatever the case may be. We try and always contact the HOAs and let them know, because they should be held to the same standard as everybody else, right?
You're right. And the city doesn't, at least right now, have any water police, if you will, people who are actively patrolling,
Right.
watching for whether it's a city facility or someone's front yard or an HOA park, someone who's patrolling and policing who's watering when. That doesn't exist.
Right.
So we do rely quite a bit on residents, if they see a pattern that's concerning, to report it.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate all the feedback and information we can get from our residents, because they're the ones that are actually out there in the early mornings as they're running, or the evenings as they're going for maybe an evening stroll, or driving on their way home, where our parks employees, they're not here in the city during that time of the day, or those times of the day. So we rely heavily on our residents to let us know if they see an issue. And if they do, they can, the more information they can get us, the better. If they can snap a picture with their phone and send it to us, that helps us out tremendously to help pinpoint exactly where those heads are at that are having issues, and we can take care of the problem. So we really appreciate that from the residents.
So how do residents reach out to you? What's the best way to reach you?
So there's several ways to do that. They can go online to our website. Under the community tab, there's a place where they can report an issue. That's one great way. They can always call into our customer service department at City Hall. I believe the number is 801-446-5323. They'll get us the information. There's an email address. Is it info@herriman.org?
Yep, info@herriman.org.
That they could submit a request there as well. And then there's also an email at parksandrec@herriman.org. That's parks, the letter N, rec@herriman.org. So those will come directly to the Parks Department, and we can address them. Any way we receive those, we'll address them.
Yeah, even if you send us a social media DM, we'll send it and forward it along to Anthony and his team. All right, that's all for today. If you have any other questions, please let us know on whatever platform you're listening or watching on, and go enjoy the parks. We have a lot of really cool, really nice parks throughout the city, a lot of cool space that Anthony and his team do a great job maintaining up in the trails and the mountainside, or throughout the city too. Herriman's a great place to play. If you have any concerns or questions, let us know, and we'll address them the best we can. So thank you, Anthony, for coming.
Thanks, John.
Again.
Yeah.
For doing this again.
No worries.
Thank you for listening and watching, and we'll catch you next time.